Hey everybody, hello ladies and gentlemen. Um, it is stardate about 3:30 p.m. Central Time here in Louisiana. This your boy Vulcan Wolverine, Kyle, aka Vulcan Wolverine, aka Vulcan Wolverine 2. I want to make a very important video, and this is going to be a worldwide exclusive because I'm not hearing anybody else say it now. Yeah, and I'm going to say it pretty definitely. I'm going to say it pretty definitely, and I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to come out, right out, and say it. What I'm doing in this video and what I'm reporting on is that Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons. And now, what I want to do is I want to go through some evidence of why I am reporting on this and why everybody in the world, not just targeted individuals, but everybody in the world needs to be more aware about remote directed energy weapons, integrated weapons platforms, and remote neuro weapons. And so now I want to show you some evidence, and I'm also going to I'm going to show evidence because the truth does not care about facts. So Julian Assange does have health issues, but I'm going to show you why those health issues have nothing to do with his deterioration in the hospital, in the prison that he's in right now. So first off, what I want to do, and I haven't, I don't know, somebody else, some other targeted individual may have talked about this or alluded to it, but from what I'm seeing, the research that I'm doing, what Julian Assange himself has said, the experience that I and other targeted individuals have with remote neural manipulation and remote neural monitoring, it is like almost 100% probability that Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuro weapons and maybe other directed energy weapons, but definitely remote neural monitored and remote neural manipulated. And people need to understand that these weapons exist, that somebody doesn't have to sneak into the prison that he's in and poison him, or sneak into the embassy that he was in and inject some poison in him, because there are weapons that can hit you anywhere that you are, can triangulate on your position, and can hit you, can put electromagnetic fields around the head, and then bidirectional streams of energy going to certain areas of the brain to actually monitor certain areas of the brain, or to manipulate, stimulate certain areas of the brain. Deep brain stimulation and shallow autonomic nervous system stimulation. So I want to go to something that Julian Assange said that kind of backs up my claims. Now, I'm going to make this video, and I'm going to make the title Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuro weapons. But as the story unfolds and as I find more and more evidence, I will be presenting that in further videos. I believe this is very important. I believe this is very important. I believe that he knows that he's being hit with these weapons, but he feels that if he comes out and says that he's being hit with these weapons, that it would discredit his work. It would discredit what people think about him. They would be able to label him as crazy, and so he keeps that under wraps. He talks about the surveillance that people can maybe understand, but I am not encumbered by that. I'm a targeted individual. I've said I'm a targeted individual, and I can talk about these things. I can do that. I can do that, you know. So I want to do that in this important situation. I know that a lot of people will say, oh, well, you're just saying everybody's targeted. You're just saying everybody's hit with these neuroweapons. Because I did say Isaac Cappy, there's a lot of evidence that he was receiving V2K. And if you're getting Voice of Skull, you probably are being remote neural monitored and remote neural manipulated. What people have to understand is these weapons are being used operationally and experimentally all over the world by intelligence agencies, by corporations, by subcontractors and contractors and subcontractors for many different reasons. Now I'm being experimented on with these weapons, like they're trying to see what they can do behaviorally to me with trauma-based behavioral mind control. I don't really have any important information. Now think about Julian Assange, what kind of important information he has. He still has information. He still has information that he has not dumped. He still has data that he has not dumped. and you think the American government, the UK government would want to find out where that information is and how to get it, maybe stop that from coming out, because in that information there's a very likely chance that this whole targeting program is in that information, and he may have kept that close to the chest as his I guess dead man switch. I hope I pray that he will live through this and not be extradited to the United States, but still release, still release the data that he's holding, or a lot of the data, but maybe keep some of it to keep him safe. I hope this works out. We've really got to support him. We've got to stay on top of this story. Unity for Jay is doing a great job. We got to keep talking about it. And I think that so many people are talking about him. He's such a common household name that it does give him a little bit of safety where they can't just walk up to him and kill him. But people have to understand that there are weapons out there where the people aiming the weapons don't even have to be near you, and they can hit you with something that is not visible to the eye. And it can tear up your brain, it can tear up your mental facilities, it can tear up your nervous system, it can just completely boggle your mind, make you nervous, make you anxious, make you paranoid, make you more paranoid than Julian Assange would be. So let me start on something that he says, a point that he makes, and I'm just going to go through evidence. This won't be my last video on this, because it's a big story, and it's a big thing to say. 100% Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons. I'll give y'all all my reasons and all my evidence, and even more after this, but I want to go ahead and start it off. It's important that people know about these weapons. It's important that people know how much they're being used for experimentation and operationally. And so I can do this. A lot of other people don't want to talk about it. They feel like maybe we can't prove it. And I'm not talking about targeted individuals, but I'm talking about people in the mainstream media. People who are really supporting Julian Assange. They don't want to come out in the public and say, well, he could be being hit with these remote weapons. Now, maybe somebody has. Maybe somebody in Unity for Jay has said it and I've missed it, or something like that. But I want to say it. This is an exclusive report. Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons, and most likely other integrated weapons, other integrated remote weapons. Let me go ahead and start with this. So this is like an interview. This was the last interview that Julian Assange gave before they cut off his communications in the Ecuadorian embassy. This question: what are the biggest threats to businesses and governments today? So let's listen to what Julian Assange says.
I mean, you've had some very good speakers that are speaking at the kind of practical, everyday computer security industry. So I'm not going to do that, probably because I wouldn't be that good at it. The WikiLeaks has a threat model, but it's a very high threat model. Absurd, in fact. I mean, the UK government, by the middle of 2015, admitted just one department alone had spent £12.6 million. It was very embarrassing.
So one department in the UK has spent £12.6 million to... Hold on, sorry about that.
On surveilling me. It was very embarrassing.
On surveilling him. £12.6 million on surveilling him. That's just what was shown to the public, and then they quickly hid that. But that was surveilling him, £12.6 million. Now, let's let him finish, but I want to explain after that if they were surveilling him with traditional means, and we know there's through-the-wall radar, we know there's remote neural monitoring, we know there's remote neural manipulation, we know that from the Cuban embassy workers and the China consulate workers that people can be remote neural manipulated with electromagnetic frequencies. So if they're spending that much on traditional ways of surveillance, the likelihood that they're using this advanced technology, because he has important information. So they wouldn't want to just surveil like his physical surroundings, his computer, and everything like that, they would go ahead and go full Monty, and they would surveil his brain. So let's let him finish up, though. I'm going to go to more evidence after this. I'm also going to show evidence that he does have physical ailments, but then show why that is not the reason for his deteriorating condition.
And so in response, they classified the budget. So the budget figures have not been released. They certainly haven't been released for others. So that's a high threat level environment. It's very interesting, I suppose, all the means that we've come up with to deal with that environment. But they are, in some sense, unique to a small to mid-sized organization operating at the highest levels, of which I'm not sure that there are any others than us. I suppose that there are some independence groups and terrorist organizations, but at least on the terror side, obviously it's quite a different game to one that we're engaged in. Okay, but there is a much bigger threat to everyone, and I see it like this. Some of you, well, at the time of the Los Alamos project, physics, Western physics, became harmonized because you brought the different physics traditions from across Europe, the leading figures, to the United States and to Los Alamos, and then you had a harmonization of nomenclature and understanding, and those people then spread out. So one of those people was Enrico Fermi, an Italian physicist, very interesting man. One night, Enrico Fermi was out walking amongst in Los Alamos with some of his physicist buddies, and he looked up at the stars and said, "Where is everyone?" And so you're going to freak out a little bit because, yes, I'm bringing in the aliens into this part of the talk to answer this question. His question is very deep. It's that there don't appear to be any. And by appear, I mean there are no physical signs that we can detect in terms of what happens to stars. The energy seems to be constantly boiling off, being wasted into space. We don't hear radio signals. We don't see anything of civilized life. And yet, in the last 10 years, we see in the last 10 years, the astrophysics has shown that there's tens of thousands of extrasolar planets that we have actually detected.
Okay, guys, I might come back to this. It's very interesting. I just wanted to show that $12.6 million spent by one of the agencies in the UK just to surveil him. That's a whole lot of money, and we know that surveillance now, it can go through walls. We know it can be the person's mind can be surveilled. We know that. So if they're spending so much money on surveilling Julian Assange, that would probably be included. That's not my only evidence. That's just a little beginner. It's very interesting what he was talking about. I'm going to go ahead and put this link to this YouTube channel in the description. This was his last interview before communications were cut, and he's a very smart man. He knew a lot. He talks about smart dust. He talked about smart dust a lot, and that being a huge danger. We all are breathing in this smart dust, and it's in our food and our water, passes the blood-brain barrier. I did a video a little while back on how they use optogenetics to actually monitor, do deep brain stimulation, also monitor deep in the brain with those nanoparticulates that pass through the blood-brain barrier, and then they use electromagnetic frequencies to basically get information from certain areas of the brain. So now I want to go to this because I want to be honest. I want to show all evidence, and I was looking at different things, and I'm going to do more research. But I'm not a journal. I don't consider myself a journalist. I consider myself talking about very, very important stuff. I think I would consider myself like a neuroethicist. But but what was it? I was gonna say, gosh, you know, right now I'm getting remote neural manipulated and remote neural monitored. It scrambles the brain. It scrambles the brain. It makes you very confused. You have a hard time communicating. I push through it, but there's a certain type of experimental level that my attackers do it to me with. Now, what they're doing to Julian Assange, who knows? Because it's operational. They could be trying to drive him insane while getting information from him, but like, so I'm experiencing that as we speak. As we speak. Let me go ahead and play this though. I was just gonna say, like, you know, well, let me just play this because I know he had physical ailments. So let me play this real quick. My attackers are just completely attacking me really hard right now. I don't understand because I guess it's important and nobody's talking about it. And we need to talk about these neuroweapons. We need to talk about the capability of agencies, a lot of agencies, private corporations, contractors and subcontractors, you know, departments of the military in every country that have remote neural monitoring and remote neural manipulation, that have integrated weapon systems that they can hit you from very, very far away. Now, Julian Assange has this important information, right? He has this important information that he hasn't dropped. You know, and it seems like, well, I'll get into it. I'll get into it in a little while. I have some articles that I want to read, but I want to play this, right? Okay, this lady, I'm not sure who she is, but this is from the Telegraph. I'll also put this in the description. Everything that I show, I'll put in the description so you guys can take a look at it. But let's see what she says. Okay, so she says he is not sick, but he has a chronic lung condition that could lead to complications. Now, this was when he was in the embassy before they arrested him. So this is from a while back. But she's just stating that he does have a chronic lung condition. This is from November 29, 2012. So Ecuador's ambassador to Britain says WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange suffering from chronic lung condition exacerbated by his cramped living conditions. He also has a shoulder condition. But let's see what she says next.
Al pulmón que pudiese complicarse. Piensa que
in the northern hemisphere we are entering winter. We have a long winter ahead of us, cold with few
invierno, y tenemos un invierno por delante, largos fríos y pocas horas de sol.
Entonces, with few daylight hours. As a result, whatever symptoms he is currently suffering from could get worse during this period. Okay, so he has a chronic lung condition, right? And he has a shoulder condition, which I'll show you in this.
He has a shoulder problem and a lung condition. He needs diagnostic tests, an MRI scan, but he runs the risk of taking those tests in handcuffs.
So I just wanted to show that with full transparency. We know he has a shoulder condition and a lung condition, but now I want to read you this. And for me, guys, this is really obvious. This is really obvious that he's being hit with remote neuroweapons. I don't know by who. I don't know if it's by our DoD, the American DoD, or if it's by British intelligence or British contractors. It would probably be British intelligence, since they're the ones who are spending money surveilling him. They could be getting cooperation from American agencies. I'm not sure about that. I'm just sure that he's getting hit with remote neuroweapons. I don't know if he's actually receiving external microwave hits. I don't know if he's being poisoned or anything like that. Now that's a question we have to ask too. You know, a lot of people are saying he's been poisoned, but people would see that, you know. Oh gosh, these. So Julian Assange shows, okay, this is from The Guardian. It's from, what's the date on this one? The date is, why can't I see the date? Okay, so the date is the 31st of May 2019. Julian Assange shows psychological torture symptoms. Psychological torture symptoms. So he has a lung condition and a shoulder condition, but The Guardian and other papers are reporting. I wish I could get these average. This is crazy. These average, they stack up or whatever. Say, so Julian Assange shows psychological torture symptoms, says UN expert. UK government urged not to extradite WikiLeaks co-founder to US, where he faces decades in prison. So Julian Assange is showing all the symptoms associated with prolonged exposure. It switches all the time. Okay, it's just really annoying. And it follows you. Okay. So Julian Assange is showing all the symptoms associated with prolonged exposure to psychological torture and should not be extradited to the U.S., according to a senior UN expert who visited him in prison. Niles Melzer, UN's special rapporteur on torture, is expected to make his appeal to the UK government on Friday. It comes after Assange, to the co-founder of WikiLeaks, was said by his lawyers to be too ill to appear by video link for the latest court hearing of the case on Thursday. Assange has been moved to the health ward of Belmarsh Prison, London, where he has been serving a 50-week sentence for skipping bail while fighting extradition to the U.S. He is accused of violating the Espionage Act by publishing secret documents containing the names of confidential U.S. military and diplomatic sources. After meeting Assange earlier this month in the company of medical experts who examined him, Meltzer will say on Friday that he fears the Australian's human rights could be seriously violated if he is extradited to the U.S., and will condemn what he describes as the deliberate and concerted abuse inflicted for years on him. Assange was arrested in April after Ecuador revoked his political asylum and invited police inside the country's Knightsbridge diplomatic premises, where he had sought refuge in 2012 to avoid extradition to Sweden over allegations of sexual assault, which he has denied. Check this out. Physically, there were ailments, but that side of things are being addressed by the prison health service, and there was nothing urgent or dangerous in that way, Meltzer said. So his lung problem, his shoulder problem, his physical ailments, there didn't seem to be anything, really urgent about that. But there is something urgent about his mental facilities. There's something very, very urgent. He's confused. So what was worrying was the psychological side of his constant anxiety. So constant anxiety. It was perceptible that he had a sense of being under threat from everyone, paranoia. He understood what my function was, but it was more than it was more that he was extremely agitated and busy with his own thoughts. It was difficult to have a very structured conversation with him. Confusion. So constant anxiety, paranoia, agitation, confusion. So his mental states, those are like 4 problems with his mental states, right? And I just want to say, like, experiencing being hit with remote neural manipulation, with neuroweapons, on an experimental level. I'm not getting hit with these weapons like on a very operational level that my attackers kind of do want to. Oh man. My attackers do kind of want, they're experimenting with this. They go to a certain level now. If they were using them on an operational level on Julian Assange, who knows what they might be trying to do to his brain. They might be trying to just drive him insane, to make him look insane, to quickly maybe get certain information bring information to the surface, torture him. They may be doing V2K on him, telling him if he gives them the password to whatever. Now this is a theory. I say what I'm reporting is that he's definitely being hit with remote neuroweapons. Now why they're doing it and if they're using V2K with it, I'm just theorizing on that. This is not all like I'm saying, oh, this is 100% for sure. 100% for sure that he's getting hit with neuroweapons. Exactly what they're doing and why they're doing it, I don't know why. But we can all kind of conjecture. My attackers are popping stuff up and just really messing with my computer. Okay, Meltzer said that Belmarsh was an old prison, had issues about that, but he described it as well maintained, adding that characterizations of it as a supermax or the Guantanamo of Britain were unhelpful. While it does have a high security wing, Meltzer said that Assange was not in that section. And people are watching Assange. Like he has people in there. He's being fed. He's losing weight, but he's being fed. Nobody's beating him. Nobody's beating him. Nobody's starving him. I think that there's probably surveillance cameras in the prison, so if somebody injected him with poison or anything like that, it would probably be seen. We need to figure out some of those things, but it seems like, okay, he was kind of doing bad, like in the embassy. Didn't like it in there. Things got monotonous or whatever. But he wasn't losing his mind, right? He wasn't losing his mind, and he wasn't acting agitated and confused and not able to hold a conversation. He could still hold a conversation. Now, why, since he's been brought to prison, is he completely incoherent and not even able to have a meeting, a remote meeting on a computer, right? The lawyer, who receives 10 to 15 requests each day from sources asking for him to get involved, said that his office had been approached by Assange's lawyers in December, but he said that he was initially reluctant to do so, admitting he was affected by what he called the prejudice around the case. However, he began looking into the case again in March, and earlier this week wrote letters to the foreign ministers of the US, the UK, and Sweden. In the course of the past 9 years, Mr. Assange has been exposed to persistent, progressively severe abuse, ranging from systematic judicial persecution and arbitrary confinement in the Ecuadorian embassy to his oppressive isolation, harassment, and surveillance inside the embassy. So he was getting traditional surveillance of his communications, of where he lived and everything, by the UK government. And they were spending billions of dollars on just traditional surveillance? No. They were spending that much money, and probably more money that they didn't say, on remote neuroweapons, on actually surveilling his brain. So I think all the evidence is here. I'm gonna keep on reading and keep on bringing out more evidence. When you have a UN torture inspector saying that he is showing severe signs of psychological torture, yet people are feeding him, no one's beating him. Isolation in the embassy, where he saw people, he was able to hang out with people. Severe psychological abuse, severe psychological torture. Now, what would that be being caused by if nobody's beating him? If nobody's like coming up to him and like treating him horribly or something like that? And maybe he does have a harassment. Maybe he does have a type of gang stalking that may be a little bit different from targeted individuals like me when I go out, people. But maybe he did have some harassment and like gaslighting and stuff like that. But it would not create this effect in his mind where he can barely communicate, where he's agitated and paranoid of anybody. And let me tell you, these neuroweapons can increase dopamine in the brain so that you get very, very paranoid. You have an artificial paranoia of people. Let's see. Where do we read to? He added, and combined to his oppressive isolation, harassment, and surveillance inside the embassy, and from deliberate collective ridicule, insults, and humiliation to open instigation of violence and even repeated calls for his assassination, Meltzer will say on Friday. So he was harassed, he was, gaslit, insulted, attacked, and things like that. Now, would that, Julian Assange seems like a very strong guy. I mean, he like did these things and put in and got this information out, knowing how much trouble he was going to get in because he really believed in it. So I do not think he would psychologically break down from things that he probably expected. Did he expect to have his brain manipulated by remote neuroweapons? I don't know. I don't know if he knew about that. Maybe he did from some of the WikiLeaks information that he was putting out, because there's a whole lot of stuff from WikiLeaks that's already come out about non-lethal weapons markets, and I think that he's sitting on a lot of things about these targeting programs, being done by the military-industrial complexes of almost every country, at least the Five Eye countries, but smaller countries with the help of larger countries. He added the UK authorities had contacted his Geneva office to indicate that the British government would be issuing a point-by-point rebuttal of the assertions made in his letter. Meltzer, who is urging the UK government not to extradite Assange to the US or to any other state failing to provide reliable guarantees against his onward transfer to the US, criticized the way in which Assange's case was handled after police took him from the embassy. I was surprised, for example, to see that on the date he was arrested, he was immediately brought to court after 6 years in the embassy and then convicted. Under the normal rule of law, you would expect someone to be arrested and then given a couple of weeks to prepare his defense at least. The former legal advisor to the Red Cross will say on Friday, "In 20 years of work with victims of war, violence, and political persecution, I have never seen a group of democratic states ganging up to deliberately isolate, demonize, and abuse a single individual for such a long time and with so little regard for human dignity and the rule of law." Now, all these countries have a big hate on for Julian Assange, targeting him. They are targeting him, right? Everybody can agree on that. You may be saying right now, well, Kyle, I think you're going too far with the neuroweapons. Or you might be saying, yeah, I think you're right. I think something's going on like that. From what I've seen, and the evidence that I've seen, the United States wants to get to the information that he has not dropped, and they don't want him to become a hero. He's become a hero. I'm not sure. They may be, this is a theory. The UK government, the US government, they might think that if he goes to trial and he's healthy and he's coherent, and he's maybe put to death or he gets put away for a long time, that he will become a martyr. So what they may be doing, now this is theory, I think he's being hit with neuroweapons. I don't know what they're trying to do. I don't know if they're trying to get information and discredit him and drive him crazy, but I think that they don't want a martyr on their hands, so they want to make him look really crazy, maybe make him say crazy things so that people maybe don't like him as much. I don't know. That's a theory. I mean, that's a pretty simple theory, which I think whatever they're doing is more complicated than that. But that may be an angle to it, because that's what they try and do. These are weapons of mass disruption. So if you've got somebody that people respect and listen to and is doing important things, they want to go ahead and use these weapons to discredit them, to make them look crazy, to make them look stupid, to make them look this or look that. Okay, the former legal advisor to the Red Cross will say on Friday, in 20 years of work with victims of war, violence, and I already read that. Let's read it again. In 20 years of work with victims of war, violence, and political persecution, I have never seen a group of democratic states ganging up to deliberately isolate, demonize, and abuse a single individual for such a long time and with so little regard for human dignity and the rule of law. Assange could face decades in a U.S. prison after being charged with violating the Espionage Act by publishing classified information through WikiLeaks. Prosecutors earlier this month announced 17 additional charges against him for publishing hundreds of thousands of secret diplomatic cables and files on the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. The 47-year-old was previously charged with working to hack a Pentagon computer system in a secret indictment that was unveiled soon after his arrest at Ecuador's embassy in London. He is in fact far from well, Assange's lawyer Gareth Pierce told the hearing on Thursday at the Westminster Magistrates Court. The next hearing on the extradition request was set for June 12th. A UK government spokesperson said the UK has a close working relationship with UN bodies and is committed to upholding the rule of law. We support the important work of the Special Rapporteur's mandate and will respond to his letter in due course, but we disagree with a number of his observations. So they're disagreeing that Julian Assange is showing signs of psychological torture, and obviously, if the UK if intelligence agencies from the UK were using remote neuroweapons on him, or maybe being aided by the United States. I think it would probably be just one of those countries that was tasked with doing that. There could be some cooperation going on there, but they would deny that there's been any torture, because if there's not any kind of physical torture that's seen, right? If he's just being put in prison, he's getting meals, nobody's like injecting him with poison or anything like that, and there's nothing that anybody can see with the visible eye, with just their eyes, they would say, well, there's no reason why he should be suffering from psychological torture. You see what I'm saying? So there's no apparent, and even the stuff in the embassy where he was attacked, harassed, and things like that would not have broken down a man. And I'm not saying he's broken down for good. I'm just saying he's very ill, and it seems like his mind is ill. It seems like he's agitated and confused. He has all these symptoms of remote neural manipulation. My attackers can give me horrible anxiety. They can make me very, very agitated and angry. They can make me paranoid of people. They can push all these buttons with your autonomic nervous system, but also deep brain stimulation too. And then they can actually receive signals, so they could get things out of his language center, things that he's thinking in his inner voice, visuals that he's thinking of. They could collect information like that, but also inject signals to make him anxious, to make him depressed, to make him agitated, to give him frequencies to push frequencies to his brain that give him these horrible things, that give him confusion. And somebody like him, where it's maybe not it's definitely not experimental. It's operational, where they're trying to actually complete an objective. Who knows how far they would go? It seems like with my attackers, they're trying to get things done, but it's like an experimental level. So there's this line where it's like, it seems like they have to, their management has to agree to whatever they're doing. They have to pass it through somebody above them, a chain of command. Judges are impartial and independent from government. With any judgment based solely on the facts of the case and the applicable law, the law provides all those convicted with a right of repeal. Okay, so let's go to this other article. This is actually by the New York Times, and I'm surprised, but the New York Times is, I'm okay with their reporting on this story. Julian Assange is suffering psychological torture, UN expert says. So it's going to be some of the same stuff from the other article, but I want to go through it still. And it's from May 31st, 2019. United Nations expert on torture said on Friday that an examination of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in a British prison showed an alarming deterioration in his mental and physical state. Now, if he was being hit with remote neural manipulation, with remote neuroweapons integrated systems, he would have a deteriorating mental as well as a physical state, because it can mess up your endocrine system. They can make you have no appetite, or make you have too much of an appetite. When they can manipulate your brain, they can manipulate your body through your brain. And why I'm so 98% probability, but I am saying that Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons, with integrated directed energy weapon systems. I don't know who it is. I don't know if it's UK intelligence, British intelligence. I don't know if it may be cooperation between American intelligence and British intelligence, but it seems operational, and there's no doctors would have looked and said, oh, well, something is going wrong in his brain. There's something physically wrong, or he's not eating, and that's why, or somebody was beating him in the jail. There's none of that. There's nothing like that. He's like not being mistreated in jail. Now this is a lot of stress, right? So people can just say, oh well, he's under a lot of stress, and that's why. But significant deterioration where he can't communicate with people because his mind is in such a state. A United Nations expert on torture said on Friday that an examination of the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange in a British prison showed an alarming deterioration in his mental and physical state, and he sharply rebuked Britain, Sweden, and the United States for ganging up, it's an interesting use of words, on Mr. Assange. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Torture and Ill-Treatment, Nils Melzer, said the examination in early May revealed that Mr. Assange's capacity to focus and coordinate have been clearly affected. They've been affected. Now, he's saying there's torture. He's saying there's psychological torture. So Julian Assange, if this was just all like, wow, from the stress of being arrested, right, and from the stress of being in jail and all this, Julian Assange has never cracked under pressure. This whole time, he knew he was doing something big, and he knew people were going after him. He knew the stakes here, and his mind was focused. I think that he did suffer some monotony and stuff like that, and maybe in the embassy they were doing some remote neural manipulation to him, but maybe now since he's in prison, maybe they don't want him to go to trial. Maybe they don't want him to go to trial. I'm not sure why, but my gut. Okay, this is what I wanted to say earlier and I forgot. I don't consider myself a journalist, but how journalists say they got something in their gut, they can feel a story in their gut. Well, let me tell you, as a targeted individual experiencing this stuff, I look at this situation and I don't see any evidence of like ill treatment. Physically, you can see ill treatment in the prison, in the hospital wing of the prison that he's in. His physical symptoms, his shoulder and his lung, nothing urgent there, right? But he's losing his mind. He's eating, and a lot of people are saying, I think I had a live stream about this where I said the same thing, but I wanted to really say it in this video and put the title there because I want to actually report it, because we have to understand, and I know targeted individuals, you'll understand, but other people, you have to understand, if these governments, if the American intelligence agencies, or the UK intelligence agencies, or the Australian intelligence agencies, or the New Zealand intelligence agencies, or the Russian intelligence agencies, or the China intelligence agencies, or the Israeli intelligence agencies want to go after a person and they don't want to get caught, they have got technology. They have got integrated weapons systems, integrated Neuroweapons that can use over-the-horizon radar, that can use microwave towers, that can use drone, that can use satellite, that can, and other delivery mechanisms too, that can target the brain of whoever they want on the globe. Get information from that brain, or inject information into that brain, or inject confusion into that brain. The brain is electrochemical, right? And so if they're messing with it with microwaves, with electromagnetic frequencies, screw up, they can induce mental injury. That's why a lot of people think that targeted individuals are mentally ill, because we're being hit with microwaves, we're being remote neural manipulated, it's inducing mental injury. And so we present when I'm always like, I can't remember what I'm about to say, mental injury, damaging the brain function, damaging how the chemicals in the brain function. So gotta know that, everybody, not just target individuals. It's time, and I pussyfoot around with this a lot, and I say, well, we can't be sure, but how can you prove this? I can't get to Julian Assange with a meter and measure how much electromagnetic radiation is around his head And, you know, even if I could, his attackers could turn it off for that. You know, it's like we've got to know that these weapons are used, and we've got to start digging and digging and digging and pointing and saying, look at that situation, it's weird. He's got nothing around him physical that would make his mind deteriorate like that. If somebody's mind deteriorated that fast, the doctor would be like, oh, well, this is something wrong with his brain, right? I would say it's like a 98% that Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons. A lot of people may be thinking this. A lot of people may be like, yeah, it's probably that because these weapons exist. But we gotta say it. We gotta say it and get people looking into it, because they're like, oh, we're not gonna get caught. You can't see the stuff with a visible eye. Out of sight, out of mind. No, it's happening. It's happening. It's happening. Julian Assange is being hit with remote neuroweapons, with remote integrated directed energy weapons. United Nations special. He was extremely jumpy and stressed, Mr. Meltzer said in an interview. It's difficult to have a structured conversation with him. There's so much going on in his mind. It's difficult to have a dialogue with him. Well, it just seems like there was always a lot of stuff going on in Julian Assange's mind. There's always a lot of things that he had to think about, a lot of things that he had to take care of, a lot of things he had to defend himself and think of a lot of things. And he always stayed strong. Why would he not stay strong now? Why would he not stay strong now? If you're getting hit with these weapons, if you're getting hit with these neuroweapons, like you know, I don't know what kind of level they are hitting his brain with these weapons, but the strongest will, it can really affect the strongest willed person on this earth. Furthermore, he said in a statement, Mr. Assange should not be extradited to the United States, where he faces charges of conspiracy to hack into a Pentagon computer. He said that the cumulative effects of Mr. Assange's punishment can only be described as psychological torture. The United Nations officials said he had sent his findings to the governments of Britain, Sweden, and the United States, along with Ecuador. A spokesman for the British government said on Friday that the nation supported the important work of the Special Rapporteur's mandate, but disagreed with some of his observations and would reply. Ecuadorian and Swedish officials could not immediately be reached for comment on Friday. The State Department referred questions to the Justice Department, where spokesman Mark Raimondi declined to comment. Mr. Assange, 47, hailed by many as a champion of transparency, has been sought by prosecutors around the globe on a variety of charges. He jumped bail in Britain and sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, as Sweden was in the middle of investigating a rape accusation against him. What I've heard about the rape accusations, it was consensual. They were consensual. So I mean, in gang stalking, in targeting, they would pay those women money to say that Julian Assange had raped them. So he's definitely being targeted. I'm just saying, with that physical targeting, with that physical harassment, which targeted individuals, when they're getting hit with neuroweapons, remote neural manipulation, external microwaves and everything, they're being harassed. They're being harassed and gaslit and honeypots put in front of them, their lives being messed up, lies being told about them. It follows the same exact protocol down to the letter, only more extreme in his case. More extreme than a lot of us, because he's such a big fish, right? And so if he has all those other standards of targeting, gaslighting, attacks, attacks on his reputation, accusations towards him and everything like that, then it would stand, it would really, then he's probably getting the remote neuroweapon part of it. And excuse me, like I am right now getting heavily remote neural manipulated. I try and replace the words that I forget with something else, and try and keep going, but it really does affect me. And look, I'm just a guy. Like, it's experimentation with me. I know that. Maybe now they kind of like when I put out some videos that maybe get people thinking, they'll attack me harder because they want to shut me up. But it's not necessarily like a whistleblower. So I'm just a little well, I'm not a nobody. I'm a special human being. And all targeted individuals are way more special than you could even imagine, that God put you in this situation. But I'm just saying, what I want to say is, like, me in my little condo here in Louisiana, my attackers 24 hours a day are doing V2K, remote neural manipulation, doing all these things. Now think about Julian Assange, who has all this important information, this important information that he's put out that has not helped any of these governments that are so angry at him, and he still has more information. He still has more information that he hasn't dropped. So that's not just a guess. It's not just a guess that he's being hit with remote neuroweapons. It's a bet that I would bet all the money that I have in my account, even though it's not a lot. So Mr. Assange, 47, hailed by many as a champion of transparency, has been sought by prosecutors around the globe on a variety of charges. He jumped bail in Britain and sought refuge in the Ecuadorian embassy in London, as Sweden was in the middle of investigating a rape accusation against him. Okay, I already read that. The United States has accused him of helping an army private to illegally download and leak classified information in 2010, much of it about the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. After he lived in the Ecuadorian embassy in the British capital for 7 years, his relationship with his host soured over his arguments with the embassy staff, his skateboarding indoors, and what the nation's officials described as threats and leaks meant to embarrass Ecuador. The country's vice president, who blamed WikiLeaks, called the actions despicable and vowed to take action. In April, the Ecuadorian government, which had granted him asylum and eventually citizenship, withdrew its protection. The British police then hauled Mr. Assange out of the embassy and placed him under arrest. A British court later sentenced him to 50 weeks in jail for violating the terms of his bail. The United States is seeking his extradition to face multiple counts of espionage for his part in the release of thousands of classified military and diplomatic cables in 2010, and he faces possible extradition to Sweden in connection with the rape investigation. On Thursday, Mr. Assange was to appear by video link from Belmarsh Prison in East London at a court hearing on the United States application for his extradition, but his British lawyer, Gareth Pearce, said her client was not well enough to participate. The presiding magistrate set June 12th for the next hearing and suggested it could be held in Belmarsh. So it's June 12th. It's June 6th now. WikiLeaks said on Thursday that Belmarsh prison authorities had moved Mr. Assange to its hospital wing after he experienced drastic weight loss and other health problems. It also said that when Mr. Assange's Swedish lawyer, Pearl Samuelsson, visited him in Belmarsh on Friday, he found that it was not possible to hold a normal conversation with him. Now, I want to say one other thing, and this is just, I mean, based off my experience with being experimented on with remote neuroweapons. When I'm isolated, my attackers go to work. When I'm not around people, they go to work. They try and tear me down. Think about how isolated Mr. Assange is in prison. And these people, you probably, I don't know. I don't know who's doing it. But whatever agency is doing it, whatever agency is hitting him with remote neuroweapons, is like, he's isolated now. Now's the time to hit him hard. Now's the time to hit his brain hard, to hit his nervous system hard, and to also get the information we need to neutralize him. To neutralize him without killing him. Because they don't want to kill him and make a martyr, right? They just want to destroy his brain and his nervous system and make him look like a wreck so people, maybe forget about him or say, oh, well, he just went crazy or something like that. That's a theory of why they're doing it, not a theory of what they're doing. Not a theory of what they're doing. It could include toxins and poisons and things like that. But in my gut, and from this evidence, because there's no visible harassment, there's no visible mistreatment physically, there's no not feeding him or anything like that. His physical ailments are not urgent, but his brain is going. His mental capacity is degrading so much. I mean, it stinks to high heavens of remote neuroweapons. And people gotta get on board and open their eyes up. These weapons exist. They're being used on everybody. They're being used on tons of people. They're mass manufactured, used by intelligence agencies, experimented on the citizens of every country, and they're using them more and more because there's a lot of money involved. But in operational scenarios like Mr. Assange's, yeah, they've been experimenting on a lot of people for a long time for a situation like this. For exactly a situation like this. When they have a hero on their hands, they have a hero that everybody looks up to that has made them look like fools. You think they're going to let that go? And I love Julian Assange, and I think we need transparency, and the corrupt things that all these governments are doing, they need to come out. Whatever the consequences to our society is, there are too many horrible things happening. The secrets need to come out. There's a, you know, if there's honor and there's morality, then people should be able to keep their secrets. But when people start experimenting on their own populations and doing super corrupt things, they lose that right to their secrecy if they're not going to protect the citizens of their countries. And Mr. Assange is right in what he did. And he's a hero to me. So I'm sorry, I'm very agitated, and I just want to say this, and I just want to report it. He is being hit with remote neuroweapons, and I just want to say it because nobody else is saying it, and it's just obvious. It's so obvious. It's not even just obvious by the situation and how he's acting. It's obvious because of who he is and what information he has. Why do you, okay, in targeted individuals, a lot of you targeted individuals may agree with me, probably agree with me, but targeted individuals that may not agree with me and non-targeted individuals that may not agree with me may think that I'm jumping the gun. Why would they experiment on so many people with remote neural manipulation, interrogation techniques and tactics, destroying people's lives, Zetsung? Why would they do all this experimentation if they weren't gonna use it in operations like this? Mr. Meltzer is not the first United Nations expert to criticize the conditions of Mr. Assange's detention. The United Nations Working Group on Arbitrary Detention condemned the 50-week sentence for jumping bail as excessive and said that sending him to a high-security prison was akin to a conviction for a more serious crime. Mr. Meltzer said he had initially been skeptical about Mr. Assange's case and had turned down a request from Mr. Assange's lawyers in December to investigate. But he said that what he found after having accepted a second request from the lawyers in March changed his mind. Wherever I delved into the case, I found a lot of dirty stuff, he said in a phone interview. In 20 years of working with victims of war violence and political persecution, this was in the other article. In 20 years of working with victims of war violence and political persecution, Mr. Meltzer added in a statement, he had never seen a group of democratic states ganging up to deliberately isolate, demonize, and abuse a single individual for such a long time and with so little regard for human dignity and the rule of law. Okay, guys, that's where I'm going to kind of end it, but I've laid out some evidence, and I show that he had physical ailments that have nothing to do with his degrading mental condition. They're not saying they're not feeding him. They're not saying there's some kind of physical ailment to his mind. It seems like they were gang stalking him and targeting him in the embassy. Probably had remote neural weapons on him in the embassy. But when he went to prison, he's even more isolated from the public. That's when they're going to turn up the heat. They want to neutralize him in his mind. They want to neutralize him and make it difficult for him to think his way out of this because he's smart. That's a theory of why they're doing it. Right now I'll say theories about why I think that they're hitting him with remote neural weapons. I think that we could all come up with some theories about who Julian Assange is, the information he has, and what he means in this society. And so these governmental agencies want to not be seen being the monster, right? But they'll still be the monster in the dark, and they'll hit him with neuroweapons. to make him look crazy, to make his mind deteriorate, to make things extra difficult for him, and who knows what? Who knows what kind of plan they have in store. All right, guys, that's all I wanted to show y'all. But it's like I'm 100% sure. I'm 100% sure these weapons are being used all over the place. They're operational. That's why they've been experimenting. They've been operational for a long time. This isn't the first thing that I've seen where it's like, yeah, probably somebody's being hit with remote neural manipulation. People got to wake up. Now, I'm not talking to targeted individuals, but non-targeted individuals, you have to wake up. These weapons are being used on tons of people in some really bizarre situations that are hard to explain. And it's like, oh, why is Julian Assange losing his mind? He's been doing this. He's been cooped up in the Ecuadorian embassy forever. And he's been staying strong. Yeah, and I mean, it just doesn't make sense why just now when he got put into prison, it's like he can't talk, he can't hold a conversation with people. All right, guys. So what I'm gonna do is if I find any more evidence, like I'm gonna follow the story, and I'm gonna follow on June 12th, the next hearing. I'm gonna see what happens. Let's all look into this. Let's all keep our feelers out on this one. It's just aside from all the evidence, and myself being hit with these weapons, and so many other people being hit with them in an experimental level, and some people that I know who are being hit at an operational level, whistleblowers and such. Who's the main whistleblower in the world? And I'm sorry to say that's so weird. This really works me up because I know a lot of people like hate Assange. Not anybody that would be watching this video. I know all you guys know he's a hero, but people who know nothing about the world, they just want him to be a footnote and go away. And he is a hero. He's a hero. He's risked everything in that. You watch and talk. He's a strong man. Just going to prison or it would not break him. He knew the worst case scenario. Well, maybe he didn't. Maybe he didn't know how far these the remote neuro weapons went. This remote torture went. Maybe he didn't know about that. Maybe he did. But when you start getting hit with it, I mean, like I have to say, I've talked to a lot of other targeted individuals, and me myself, I'm a very strong-willed person. Like I've gone through a lot of shit in my life, Crohn's disease, and getting through high school and college with Crohn's disease, and just I'm a strong person. But this stuff, when you're hit with it all the time, boy, it can break you down so you don't even remember who you were. You got to keep putting yourself together. But with an operational, like that's in an experimentation level where it seems like my attackers have this kind of line that they don't cross, and I'm also defending from it, but I wouldn't be getting the same level as Julian Assange. Who knows what they're doing, and who knows how far they're willing to go, at an operational level where it's probably not a contractor or subcontractor, but it's actually an intelligence agency using this technology to do this to him. Now, I would say probably the UK intelligence, British intelligence, MI6, in cooperation with U.S. intelligence. Maybe. That's a guess. That's a theory, but it's not a theory that he's being hit with remote neuro weapons, and that's going to be the title of this because I want to report it world exclusive. I have not heard anybody else say it, and these weapons really exist. They are reality. I'm not jumping the gun. I'm looking at all this, and I'll look for more evidence as this story goes on, and I'll release that evidence to compile it, and maybe he will talk about it. I hope to God he will talk about it. I hope that he's okay. I hope he comes out of this all right. I hope I'm wrong, but I hope I'm wrong and he's just sick with something, and then he gets all better, and this turns out okay. But I just don't see it turning out okay. They want blood. The governments that he's put out information about, and we got to do as much as we can. Sometimes just putting out stories about it is the most that I can do right now, and just talk about it. But A lot of people are protesting and stuff like that. All right, guys, I love y'all. Yeah, I just wanted to make this video because I'm just so unbelievably sure that that's the case, because everything lines up, everything that he's experienced lines up with these technologies being used. So when I get more information, I'll definitely put it out, because Mr. Assange is a hero to me, because I'm going through stuff that he's trying to get out to the public so it can end it, so the public can be enraged and angry, and then the intelligence agencies and the military-industrial complexes of all these countries will have to stop doing the very evil stuff that they're doing when it's out in the light. So he's a hero, All right, guys, I love y'all. I'll definitely see y'all in the next one. That wasn't too bad, an hour. And really, I'm going to be praying a whole lot for Julian Assange. You guys put up a lot of prayers too. Let's everybody really pray and just send all your goodwill and all your positive energy. Just send it out to him, and just reach out to God to protect him, to send him people. He has a lot of good people around him who are going to try and help him and protect him. So let's hope for the best, do as much as we can. I'm just going to keep on but putting out videos about it. And I'll think of some other stuff to do. I'm gonna see what Unity for J is doing. See if maybe I can donate some money or something to Unity for J. All right, guys. I'll see you on the next one. I love y'all. Stay strong.